We are watching reaction around the NFL to President Trump's comments about players who protest during the national anthem. Players and team owners have criticized Mr. Trump's remarks, and NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell wrote in his statement, quote, "Divisive comments like these demonstrate an unfortunate lack of respect for the NFL." It didn't take long to see reaction on the playing field. The Jacksonville Jaguars and Baltimore Ravens played in London Sunday. Kickoff was just after 9 a.m. Eastern. Players from both teams knelt during the national anthem. The Pittsburgh Steelers chose to stay in the locker room for the national anthem ahead of their game against the Chicago Bears. Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin spoke with Jamie Erdahl of CBS Sports.
We're not participating in the anthem today. Not to be disrespectful to the anthem, to remove ourselves from this circumstance. People shouldn't have to choose. If a guy wants to go about his normal business and participate in the anthem, he shouldn't be forced to choose sides. If a guy feels a need to do something, he shouldn't be separated from his teammate who chooses not to. So we're not participating today. That's our decision. We're going to be 100%. We came here to play a football game. That's our intentions, and we're going to play to win.
To be clear, that means your team won't be on the field.
We will not be on the field.
Coach, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's bring in John Dickerson in Washington. He's CBS News Chief Washington correspondent and anchor of Face the Nation. So, John, why would President Trump pick a fight with the NFL?
Well, it's a good question. I think the motivations may be not totally clear. I think in the moment you can see the kind of reaction he got from his crowd in Alabama. I think he feels a cultural affinity with them and doesn't see this as picking a fight at the NFL, but being very clear about something he and a lot of his supporters find offensive in the moment of a national anthem. The problem, of course, is that the president is not the president merely of his supporters, but of an entire nation.
Well, as we saw on some of the Sunday morning shows, Mr. Trump's comments have taken attention away from this final push on the Graham Cassidy health care bill. To what extent does that undermine Republican efforts?
Well, you know, in a way, this moment highlights the opportunity the president has. He has a deep connection with his base, and that has a strong control over the Republican Party. You could imagine a different situation where the president used his remarks and all of his flair on the stump that gets people so excited in the service of the actual program that he's trying to implement as president. And he chose not to do that. He talked briefly about health care and how hard he was working, but we've really yet to see him deploy all of the skills he uses to point out the shortcomings of NFL and NBA players, but not to lift up the health care bill they're trying to pass this week. So it does get in the way, but the bigger thing in the way of this health care plan is that there don't look like there are enough Republicans to support it because of its structural policy flaws and the fact that the process that's been used, according to Senator John McCain and then today Susan Collins in our conversation with her, the process that's been used is really outside of the normal ways of doing things. And the reason that's a problem is that it leaves no opportunity to address what some people think are catastrophic flaws in this new piece of legislation.
I want to turn to foreign policy here. North Korea's foreign minister had harsh words for President Trump at the United Nations yesterday, and the U.S. flew bombers off North Korea's coast. Are there calls to de-escalate tensions?
No calls for de-escalation inside the two parties here. You've certainly had the Chinese, the Russians, and the French all suggesting the United States should sit down with North Korea. The South Koreans have been less enthusiastic, but South Korea and Japan, two countries that would be in the sights of North Korea if this came to hostilities, obviously would like to see a de-escalation and see conversation, and that's the U.S. position as well. The tension here, of course, is that one of the ways the U.S. thinks it might get the North Koreans to the negotiating table is if the North Koreans take seriously the overwhelming force the U.S. could deploy if things got to a military pass. But we should quickly say there's a lot of loose talk about military options. Nobody I've talked to in the Pentagon or experts who know about the military in North Korea thinks that if there was military options, it's clear it would be catastrophic and of a kind that people, most are not alive who've ever seen anything like it. And so as people talk about military, it sometimes loses the seriousness. And this is something that keeps getting pointed out to people, to me, from people I talk to inside the Pentagon, and they know about these things.
Finally, John, the Alabama Republican Senate primary is Tuesday. We saw President Trump campaigning with Luther Strange on Friday, but Steve Bannon is backing Strange's primary opponent, Roy Moore. What is at stake in that primary?
And you also have Ben Carson, the Housing and Urban Development Secretary, backing Moore against the president's position. And then you have the president supporting supporting Strange in concert with Mitch McConnell, with whom the president has had some issues. So what is at stake is sort of fascinating. It's Donald Trump versus Donald Trump. On the one hand, you have the president supporting the incumbent senator, put in that position after Senator Sessions became the attorney general. You have the president supporting Luther Strange, and then you have people who feel like they know the Trump movement and Trump spirit better, presumably, than the president does, supporting Mr. Moore. So I think in the end, we'll kind of have to see what happens. It's hard to we guess before these outcomes, and then things go in another direction. But I think what you can say at this point is that the passions we see and the charges the two candidates have made against each other, and the fact that people are taking sides, is a precursor of what we are likely to see pretty regularly between now and the end of the 2018 election. And this is, the Democrats have their own issues, but this is one of the ways in which the cracks in the Republican Party come out into the public light.
Complicated political landscape. John Dickerson in Washington. John, thanks so much.
Thanks, Elaine.